without further ado, Dr. Josie Schafer.
Thank you. I'm not used to being on a stage.
It's a little distant.
Oh my gosh, I haven't been out in public in a really long time. Hi, great to be here. Thank you so much. I'm honored to be with you all. I've been studying entrepreneurship in Nebraska for 8 months, so it's actually awesome to hang out with some entrepreneurs. That's a really good way to sort of cap off that experience. So the Center for Public Affairs Research at the University of Nebraska at Omaha collaboratively produces and disseminates high-quality public scholarship on topics that impact the lives of Nebraskans. That ranges from demographics. We are the State Data Center, which is a title from the United States Census Bureau that just makes us really good at working with census data, getting out that demographic and economic data to you all to use in your businesses. And then we also dig deep on a wide range of topics like Kathy mentioned, and entrepreneurship, economic development, the workforce of Nebraska are just topics that come up over and over and over again. So we've really put together a couple slides today to help see that in a different way. And I'll tell you, we'll evidence a lot of what Director Goins said. And hopefully then those goals that he put in place can really take us to the next level. I also want to say here too, anything you see today, we make really available. Please, please come to our website and grab it. Reach out if you're looking for something specific. We believe data is power. We want you to have it. We don't try to keep it to ourselves. We have interactive dashboards all over our websites. We're always available to do custom data pulls for you. Please know we want you to have everything we have for you today. So just reach out if you need it. So starting with some population trends, focusing on the 2020 census. 2020 census is a count of every person in the United States that happens every 10 years. In between the decennial censuses, we do have a bunch of data resources, the American Community Survey, the Population Estimates Program. So we have data annually, but this is a pretty big, pretty important count that has consequential impacts in both policy and politics. So we like to see those numbers. And some really exciting things for us, as well as some challenges. So since 2010, Nebraska's population has increased 7.4%. That's a big number. So the Population Estimates Program, 2018-2019, we were estimating about 6% overall growth. We were estimating 6%. We hit 7.4. Big deal for Nebraska. Actually pretty middle of the road growth compared to a lot of other states. That's also a big deal for Nebraska. We had been sort of on the lower end of growth at the 2010 census, so we have stepped up a notch. But 69 counties in Nebraska have lost population. We were estimating 64 counties had lost population in 2018 and 2019. So higher overall growth, but rural Nebraska has lost population at a rate we didn't expect. I will talk about that. I just want to show here, so red is population growth. You will see Sarpy County, highest in the state for growth. The urban areas, Omaha, Lincoln, Lancaster, and then Grand Island, Kearney area, pretty much the only areas experiencing pretty significant growth. The urban areas of Nebraska, those ones I just suggested, grew about 11%. So of that 7.4%, all of it was urban because rural lost about 2.2. Okay, so we are seeing real shifts in where the population lives in the state. About 57% of the population is in 3 counties, Douglas, Sarpy, and Lancaster. Overall population positive though, and more than expected. So see the good and the bad here. Just want to show you, most of that growth is in suburbs. So Sarpy County, and then this is Douglas County by census tracts. No one knows what a census tract is. It's a very small level of geography, but it helps us see in the city a little bit tighter, a little bit closer. And so you can see most of the growth out by Elkhorn. And then, like I said, Sarpy County. So we are suburbanizing really quickly. A lot of people think we're urbanizing really quickly. We're really not. We're suburbanizing more than we are urbanizing. So how did we get to overall 7.4% population gain, but 2.2% loss in rural counties? So I lived for a long time in North Carolina, and in North Carolina, one of the things everyone likes to say is, what are all these Yankees doing here? And they are correct. Most of the people that come to North Carolina are in fact Yankees. We don't have a Yankee problem here. So this graph looks at net in-migration and net out-migration of both domestic and international. This is actually a dashboard we have online. You can see this data for every state. Go to governing.unomaha.edu, and you can find this one. It's really interesting because we both see in-migration and out-migration by state, where they're coming, domestic or international, and then you even see where they're going. For Nebraska, we have up there. So I want to talk about it. We are net negative on domestic migration. That means people are not moving here from other states. Some people move here from other states. I moved here from other states. My colleague Morgan Vogel moved from other states. Anybody else moved from another state at some point? Right, so people move here, do not get me wrong, but more people move out than move in from other states. So we are domestic net negative. We are international net positive. It's not a huge number. I think we're like 1,500 people net positive for international a year. Remember, I said we're about 1.9 million in the state. 1,500 international compared to other states is actually pretty low, but by the way, net positive for international. When we're trying to grow, that's one area of growth for us. The biggest movement is within the state. So how did Omaha, Lincoln get 10.9% growth compared to the rural, which was negative? They're other Nebraskans. It's folks leaving rural Nebraska and moving to urban Nebraska. That's what the population shift is. So we have a little bit of international. We're negative on the domestic net. It's people moving around the state that is pushing the growth. And then once they move, they have children. And that's our positive. We're one of the few states in the country that is still positive for what we call natural change, so births being greater than deaths. That's something I worry about. 2020 was the first year in which the population 75 and older was greater than the population 5 and older. So we are an aging state. We are not keeping up. We're not having as many children as we do aging adults. That's okay. Right now, we're still net positive. So most of the growth is people leaving rural Nebraska, moving to urban Nebraska, and then having children in urban Nebraska. That's our growth source. Make sense? Great. Okay, workforce and entrepreneurship. I have a couple different slides here. There's a ton going on. Bear with me. I'm looking back there. It's kind of hard to see. Okay, so I just want to do a little overview of our workforce and start at the top. That's the number of people over 16 that are employed full-time year-round. Pretty big number. Remember, our total population, 1.9. Persons 16 years and older in the labor force at all, even bigger. This is actually the first year that we have over 1 million people in the labor force. That's cool. We're growing. 74% labor force participation rate. This is actually from 2019. It's only gone up. Lowest unemployment rate in the country, as you all know. Everybody in Nebraska works. It's kind of an amazing phenomenon. It's a wonderful phenomenon. We definitely don't have to complain about people not working here. Compared to other states, we have some of the highest rates of people over 65 that are in the labor force. We have one of the highest rates of folks with a bachelor's degree in the labor force within 1 year of graduating. 90% of students that graduate are in the labor force within 1 year. It's a pretty good rate. You can see labor force participation rates by race and ethnicity. Everybody here works at a really high rate. Several people beating the average of, several groups beating the average of 70%. Come down on the left to the box, we see men and women both work at really high rates. 80% for females, 85% for male. It's actually higher when we take into account having children in the household. Again, that's actually something that doesn't occur in every state. In a lot of states, you have children and someone stays home with the children. Not in Nebraska. We have some of the highest rates of females with children in the house, under age 18, in the labor force. If you ever want to know how to solve a workforce challenge, childcare, right? We need someone to watch our children while we are in the labor force. If everybody works here, why aren't we growing faster? Why aren't we growing harder? Why isn't there more business development? I'm going to show a lot of those things too. Why do we have a labor shortage if everybody here works? I think it's this slide. I could be wrong, but I've actually tested this in a couple surveys and I'm pretty close to right here. I think it has a lot to do with pay. And I'm going to show pay, median income by occupation. But I just wanted to show this. This is median income by race, ethnicity, and gender. A white male has the highest median income in Nebraska, and it goes down from there, with a Latina female making 50% of what a white male makes. Now, it is absolutely education. It is absolutely occupational choices. I promise you those things matter. But I have done some statistical analysis and controlled for those factors. The gap is still there. So we have a pretty large pay gap. We've actually compared this to other states. The pay gap is large. We also, people might complain that a white male's median income of $50,711 is also too low. I think it's a wage problem. We have people willing to work. We have people working, but they're not making enough money to want to be here and grow here. Look at the one above that. If the wage gap doesn't get you mad, this will. That's the number of people who work full-time year-round in Nebraska and are in poverty. The number is higher when we take into account households. It's like 34,000. 34,000 people in Nebraska who has someone in their house working full-time year-round and meets the poverty threshold, and then, don't get me started, most people believe the poverty threshold is much too low for a truly good life. We have people working in poverty. I could say it 100 times, but it really boggles the mind. Well, you can't grow that way. We can't grow that way. So, unbelievably amazing workforce that is so engaged, so hardworking, works younger, works longer, works harder. But it doesn't pay. It doesn't pay off. I did a survey quite a while ago where we asked people on LinkedIn who had ever lived in Nebraska. I'll show it to you at the end, but I just want to say it here because I think it matters. That ever lived in Nebraska, why they left Nebraska. Job opportunities and pay. Job opportunities and pay. We said, is it quality of life? Is it childcare? Is it taxes? Is it amenities? Is it being by the coast? Is it being weather? We gave them every option. Job opportunities and pay. Okay, bear with me. This one's a beast. I know it, but it just does a lot of work for us at one time. And I'm actually going to step back here. It's easier for me to see. Okay, I'm going to show you, this is all the different occupation classifications that the Census Bureau collects data on. So pretty much every occupation is somewhere in here. It's grouped in here if you have questions. So that's what's scattered around the middle, occupations. On my horizontal axis, I have the number of people that are in that occupation. Number of people that are in that occupation. On my vertical axis, I have the median income of that occupation. So essentially, I'm plotting people by how many people work in there and what they make. One last layer, bear with me, is the size of the bubble. That is projections for growth in that occupation between 2020 and 2030. These are projections produced nationally by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. I have done my own projections in the past, but COVID really shook things up on me, so I need to sort of refine my equation. So these are not Nebraska-specific projections, but national projections are very commonly used. Okay, so we have income, number of people engaged, and projections for growth in the occupation out to 2030. Okay, let me kind of get us settled. So let's look at transportation and material moving, mostly because there's not 100 circles layered on top of that. So if you look at transportation and material moving, about 65,000 people are employed in that, if I go up. And then I can go over from maybe like 35,000 is the median income. And then they have a pretty good size on them. So let's say, I would say that's right under 10% projected growth in that occupation. Everybody with me? I know it's a lot. I should find a different way. I keep putting these up though. It's just kind of fun. Okay, so let's talk about all the different things we can learn from this. So the first thing I did was I put a red line going up vertically. So about 40,000 people working in an occupation is a lot of people working in an occupation in Nebraska. That's the average. And then median income also happens to be 40,000. I love when Nebraska's easy, so I put a red line going across. So that breaks it into 4 quadrants, right? You have low number of people working in the occupation with a high wage. What are those jobs? Computer and math, architecture and engineering, legal. Make sense? Low number of people working in them, high salary. Also look at the size of the bubbles there. There's a lot of growth there. Computer, math, tech, those are growing sectors, nationally and in Nebraska, right? So we currently have a low number of people working in them, even though they're great high salaries, and they're gonna grow really fast. Look right over at the University of Nebraska and say, what are you doing about that, right? Because by the way, those people need at least a bachelor's degree, if not more. Jump over to high number, high wage. We have a lot of people working in it, and it pays a pretty good wage. Management, what else is up there? Health diagnosing and medical treating practitioners, thank you UNMC. Business and financial operations. Notice healthcare, I think that's like, that diagnosing practitioners, pretty high growth, pretty high wage. What I'll tell you, some of these high wage ones, so one doctor creates about 6 or 7 other jobs, usually below the line. So we'll get down there in a minute. Okay. Next thing I want to go is below the line. Notice there are more bubbles below the line than above the line. That suggests to me we have more people working in low-wage jobs than we do in high-wage jobs. We have more people in Nebraska working in low-wage jobs than we do in high-wage jobs. I've actually done the math. We definitely have more people in low-wage jobs than high-wage jobs. That's concerning, especially when we look at some of those growth bubbles, right? The growth is largely at the top, and unless we get that growth at the top, some of these jobs at the bottom aren't going to grow that fast. So let's take low number, low wage. Personal care and service, healthcare support. Healthcare support is expected to grow by 23% between 2020 and 2030. I would guess most of the nation is aging the way Nebraska is, but we are rapidly aging. I would say healthcare support, in order for people to age in place in Nebraska, is going to grow more than 23%. I'd probably put that number a little higher. But notice it's a low-wage job. Notice, too, we don't have a ton of people working in it now. We've got to move that one, right? If we truly want people to age in place, we've got to move that to a high number of people working and at least a median wage job, if not a little higher. That's the way we keep people in Nebraska. We need to grow that one. Food preparation and personal care services are the other ones that are kind of down there of interest, right? All of those doctors are going to want to go somewhere to eat. They're going to want to have their hair done. So that growth is really actually a function of those sectors growing as well. High-wage jobs keep low-wage jobs employed. Someone has to go buy those services. Something there. Okay, a couple other things I want to point out on here. I did an analysis back in April where I looked at the percentage of occupations that were able to work remote. And there's another clear pattern. I won't lay it on for you here because that would be too much. Above the line went remote. Above the horizontal line went remote. Computer, math, legal, architecture, management. They can go remote. Below the line, food prep, healthcare support, production, they can't go remote. So the COVID-19 had a disproportionate impact on low-wage workers. COVID-19 had a disproportionate impact on low-wage workers, and it wasn't just because they were low-wage. The occupations did not allow them to go remote, so those are the businesses that had to close down. Those are the businesses that had to shed workers. So a lot of times people are maybe looking at those PPP loans or those grants that went out. Well, why are we providing grants for jobs that don't innovate? In that particular crisis, you had to. That's where the impact was. I went remote easily. It was no problem. I had a laptop already, right? It's not a big deal. A lot of jobs couldn't go remote. That's where we lost people. So it was kind of, from an economic development perspective, COVID had an impact that didn't necessarily help us grow our economy, because providing that support for the people that needed it most were not necessarily the sectors or people that were going to grow and innovate into the future. Let's see if I want to say anything else about this. A couple have red lines, red circles. Those are actually negative for growth in 2030. I think that's an interesting COVID one too. So you have office and administrative support is expected not to grow. Well, notice we have a high number of people in there already. And then think about COVID. We went remote. We needed less administrative support, right? We had to handle, there was no paperwork. We all used DocuSign. The building didn't need any support. No one had to make the coffee. So office and administrative support were actually expecting to go negative, but we already have a ton of people working in that industry compared to it. I think that's the highest number of people we have are in that job. So I think that one's kind of interesting. Sales and production also expected to lose a couple folks. That might not necessarily be true here in Nebraska, but projections nationally are pretty low. Any specific one you want me to talk about up there? Any occupation of real interest? Everybody get why I'm segmenting them that way? Those 4 quadrants tell us a ton of different things. So I also layered on unemployment. It's at the bottom. Go ahead.
This is referring back to the previous slide, but also relates to this high wage, low wage situation. I continue to be appalled when comparing the male salaries to the female salaries. And what, I mean, is that structural, which I doubt, or is it biased, or
Sure.
what comes out of it?
Okay. So we do have to start with the structural explanations. So do Latina female get bachelor's degrees? I'm actually going to jump over here. So education is a really important attribute of occupation choice and thus income. So right, we hear about tech people that leave college and go start huge companies. There are some of them, but largely income is tied to education over occupation. I think people think that's a little weird. But think about the occupations that are high wage earners. They require a lot of education. So in this graph, we have the number of people in the bars at each level of educational attainment. And by the way, we still have 9% of the population in Nebraska that's 25 and older that has less than a high school degree. Problem. Right? Then we have high school graduate, some college or associate's degrees. I will tell you that about 10% of that 30% group is associate's degrees, and they make a great wage. To Director Gowen's point, get folks in trade schools, get folks associate's degrees, they do really well. Bachelor's degrees, then graduate or professional degrees. As a researcher, I look for relationships like this because it's hard, right? People are hard to study. They do all sorts of random things some days. That's a perfect relationship. As education goes up, income goes up. If I look at this wage, there's a correlation between all of my high wage earners and having a bachelor's degree or more. So I can make this graph easier by going here. Only a couple categories. Get more education, income goes up. And I am including associate's degrees and trade degrees. They are really important. Go over there, there's like installation, maintenance, and repair. I would say that's going to balloon in Nebraska as well, probably more so than national. But it's a high wage job already here, because I'm telling you our associate's degrees do really well in this state. I think they're at like 41 for median income. Get more education, get a higher wage. So I think there's absolutely something, I know I'm jumping around, sorry, that folks on this lower end, these racial and ethnic wage gaps and these gender wage gaps, has to do with education. But it's not totally education. Like I said, I can hold education constant and it still exists. I can hold race and ethnicity constant and it still exists. I can hold occupation choice constant and it still exists. So that's telling me that I go up to the very top of these things and I say a health diagnosing practitioner, a doctor, a Latina female doctor is making less than a white male doctor. Same education, right? Same education, same occupation choice. They're making a different wage. So it is something else. Oh gosh, I've got to keep going. I am so sorry. Thank you. Anyway, it's something that my colleague Morgan Vogel and I are actually doing a study right now of women in STEM in Nebraska and asking them what they are. And there is bias. There is something going on there. It's more than just a structural. Okay, business growth was strong in Nebraska, 7%. Look at that for the Midwest. I want you to get excited. This is a big deal. This is basically through COVID-19, March 2020 to March 2021. But I'm going to bring it down a notch. But by the way, business growth was strong. And I'll tell you, the last recession, Nebraska business growth was strong, and we were strong through COVID-19 too. The resiliency of Nebraska and Nebraska businesses and Nebraska support, all the things Director Goins said happened in Nebraska to keep people at work, actually did occur. Going to take you down a peg though. This is business growth over time. Business growth over time is usually very static in Nebraska. This 7% is crazy. So, right, basically neutral, 2017, 2018, 2019, that's the number of businesses and the percent, year-over-year percent growth. Then look what happened in 2020. Like it happened everywhere, we lost a ton of businesses. So then that growth up is really recouping where we were, but then still a little growth. So it's still about 2% growth, which is much better than 2017, 2018, 2019. Okay. Employment growth was moderate. So this really does say to me that we were just replacing business establishments rather than growing business establishments when I say there was that 7% growth there. So you can compare our rate of 2.9 to the Midwest and it's moderate. But through COVID-19, we added businesses and we added employees. Don't let anybody tell you that's not true. It's 100% true, and that was really hard. Percent of Nebraskans at work did drop to a 10-year low in 2020. I looked at this very, very carefully. If anyone wants this analysis, I will do it. So that come up to that full employment is really amazing here in Nebraska again. Unbelievable resilience. Usually most people in Nebraska leave the labor force intentionally, so like maybe they're having a family or taking care of an aging adult. Layoffs was the #1 reason for that low wage. And of course, that was during the pandemic. Rate of new entrepreneurship. So this is the percent of the population that started a new business. So this is why I know those business establishments were, growing business establishments, because their rate of new entrepreneurship starting a new business over the last several years has been pretty low. You can see that over time. 1998, let me know what was going on. I wasn't here. But that was the best rate of entrepreneurship we've had in a pretty long time. 0.37% of people started a new business, so like 1 in 200. We'll take it. And we've not gotten back there yet, so something was in the water that week. So what's next? I want to take just a couple minutes to talk about the next study we've done. Everything I've shown today, they're very fresh numbers, they're very new numbers. A lot of data was not released during 2020, so you are seeing the most recent numbers here. But we knew this, right? We know that entrepreneurship has not been growing in the state. We know that we haven't been adding employees. We know that we have really hard workers, but incomes haven't grown over time. I didn't show you that one today, but I have it, especially for low-wage workers. So what are we going to do? That was that next question, and the Department of Economic Development is nailing it with those goals. They really coincide with everything that we learned. But we had a 3-part research methodology we've taken over the last couple months. We did interviews with 13 members of the entrepreneurship ecosystem. That's the exact definition that NETforce gave this morning, right? The community that supports entrepreneurs, who those people are around them. We interviewed 13, then we did a survey of 265 people. We got a 50% response rate. I think it's 133 responses from that entrepreneurship ecosystem, and then we talked to 10 entrepreneurs. Your face might be up there. We came up with 5 themes with several calls to action in each theme. How much time do I have? None? Okay, I can do this in 5. Sorry, I'm a fast talker. Ensuring the entrepreneurship talent pipeline. We have heard this over and over again. We can't just be reaching out to existing entrepreneurs, we have to be growing people that are interested in entrepreneurship. But they're not just in high schools. It's diversity, it's inclusion, it's outreach. Reach out to unemployed people. They might know something about their industry that you haven't thought about, right? We have to find entrepreneurs everywhere we can. We had so many great quotes in this section about like, this is what we can do well. We can find them, we can grow them. The culture of Nebraska, nice. Nebraska is really nice, and I really, really love it. And the positivity there that just what Director Goen said, you can have a coffee with the CEO here. That is unbelievable mentorship you can't get in other states. We need that. But we also need to make it easy to join entrepreneurship. Cutting some red tape, finding solutions to common problems, making sure everyone has that culture of Nebraska nice. Everyone can access that system. Risk aversion throughout the ecosystem. This one was fun. So entrepreneurs said, well, the ecosystem members don't take risks. They don't want to give us funding. They don't want to help us through the hard parts. And the ecosystem members were like, oh, the entrepreneurs don't take enough risks and put themselves out there. We're going to have to talk to each other, friends. Right? But there is risk aversion. I don't own my own business. I wouldn't do it. It's terrifying, right? So we have to find ways to support entrepreneurs at the time intervals that they really need the support. And we have a couple suggestions there. We also just need to so embrace entrepreneurs, right? We can't make them feel alone. We've got to make them feel totally connected to the system. Lack of consistent goals and collective action. We actually asked, what are your goals? Some are over here, some are over here, some support this business type, some support that business type. That's okay, every business type needs some support, but we've got to really work together to make sure every business type has the support they need. And then gaps in programming and resources, we just said, hey, what gaps exist? And we got a ton of answers. Internships was a big one. We need that workforce development connection to entrepreneurs. So just all sorts of quick fixes we like to think about, little things that we kind of all separately knew we needed to do, but what if we just put that all in one place and say, here's the step forward. So we will be releasing that in a couple weeks. We want to thank the Nebraska Business Development Center so much for the support to do that work. It was so fun. It was so amazing to talk to all of you that are really in this work and just take your insight and put it on paper somewhere so we can get to the next level. I appreciate it so much. Like I said, please reach out if you have any questions. I will be around for most of the day and would love to talk to you.
See, if you wouldn't mind, if we have about 2 minutes. Does anybody have a pressing question for the greater good of the group? Anybody out there? Yes?
Okay, we have a question here. How does childcare fit in the quadrant?
Oh my gosh, great question. So my husband is a teacher, so I might be a little tough on this one. So education, instruction, and library. Big growth bubble. Big growth bubble. It's a little over 10%. Because we know, and I would probably say in Nebraska, right? I said we have one of those high natural growth rates, so we have kids coming in. Education's growing. Look where it is. So we have about 70,000 people that work in education, and median income is right there above the line, right over 40,000. So I'll say that's what my husband makes. He has 2 graduate degrees. So I don't think we pay very well in childcare. If you think about early childcare, my kids all went to daycare. You want the best, highest quality. And what do you do to get the best, highest quality? You have to pay more. But everyone should have access to that. And to be honest, I don't know that it definitely got passed down to the teachers either. So education is a growing area for Nebraska. I think remote education is going to be really important for Nebraska in the future, but we have to have really high quality teachers. And we're okay, could always be better.